If you're looking for a way to learn about your true essence based on cutting-edge developments in esoteric science, this video is for you. So for millennia, cultures around the world have turned to the stars to understand both their destiny as well as their cosmic origin. The Egyptians, they built megalithic structures in precise alignment to stars and planets in the sky. The Vedic scientists claim to be able to chart past lives and intricate details about a person's potential based solely on their time of birth. Medieval doctors used transits of planets against the backdrop of constellations to diagnose and treat medical conditions for centuries. In fact, before we had Western medicine, this was the most reliable form of medical practice in the medieval world. And in the last 30 years, the system of human design has kind of taken the world by storm, and it is even used to determine the ideal configuration of leadership in larger corporations. In essence, our species has always known that there's a correlation between the planets and stars in the sky and the events that transpire in both our personal lives and the human collective at large. But it wasn't until very recently that we've been actually able to accurately map the stars in the sky. Assessing the boundaries of constellations with a great deal of accuracy using highly powered telescopes, satellites, and computer imaging. Surely, if there is a correlation between planets, stars, and our potential, then it's important to ensure that we're looking at an accurate placement of celestial bodies, right? Well, as you'll learn in this video, that's not been the case. And that's why I've created the Trifecta Total Coherence System to bridge the gap between esoteric knowledge and our emergent scientific understanding regarding the nature of the cosmos. In essence, Trifecta is a system that creates total coherence between your conscious experience, your heart and higher will, and the greater flow of life. When this happens, you begin to relax because you realize there's nothing to force in life. Instead, you're able to live as you were intended, in freedom from your conditioning, in alignment with your deepest desires, while naturally attracting the resources you need to navigate the material plane. This system was actually born out of a personal crisis in my life. When I came into contact with this information that led me to create Trifecta, I was in a really deep, directionless hole. It was a dark night of the soul-like experience for me. And as a result of that, I needed some serious divine intervention. So when I came into contact with Trifecta, it allowed me to find my mission again. And within 3 weeks, my broken relationship came into a state of harmony. My business had been bleeding money for a number of months. The income actually tripled and pulled me out of a financial crisis as well. I had a motorbike accident last year and just it was real chaos. So this shift was nothing short of miraculous. And personally, I am eternally grateful that it came into my life at this time, and it allowed me to work with it and refine it and actually develop this system. So after I went through the process, I felt a huge weight lift. It was a burden off my back as I felt freedom in my body and inspiration coursing through my mind and my entire being. I knew at the time I needed to get to work with this, as there was clearly profound wisdom here. And I have always worked with esoteric systems, I should say, not always, but the last 21 years, which is a long time. So what I began doing with this was I began to offer donation-based readings. And within 6 months, I had been able to complete over 450 readings using Trifecta. And that's not using intuition, that's just using the mechanics of the system. The response was staggering. People told me that no other astrology or human design reading had come close to what they'd been shown with Trifecta. Hearing the words in their readings elicited massive shifts for people on a deeper level of their being. Confusion and persistent problems that had plagued them for decades suddenly cleared up and dissolved. Now, I can't verify the truth of these testimonials, but I believe that they were the honest account of those who had come in contact with this body of knowledge. And I believe it because it happened to me. It was my experience too. I had just gone through a drastic transformation using the system. So since then, I've been able to create some code that can help you run your own Trifecta reading for free. If you stay to the end of the video, I'll tell you how you can get started unraveling your own life path using Trifecta for free. But first, I'm going to give you some background on how this system evolved through my own journey using astrology, human design, and the gene keys. So for the last 20 years, I've been using astrology quite regularly in my life. It always kind of made sense to me. It was a fit and a useful way of contemplating archetypes on the nature of reality, giving me a little bit of direction, giving me a little bit like of a compass bearing to navigate my life, especially because the world's pretty crazy out there, right? Growing up in cities and in Western culture. But 7 years ago, I stumbled upon human design. And it came at a time when I was considering a massive shift in life. I was going to leave my job in Canada and move to Australia without a plan, throwing caution to the wind, going on a mystical journey of spirituality and entrepreneurship. So this is a big leap for me. And the information in this human design reading made so much sense at the time to me. It gave me the certainty to know that taking this crazy leap into the unknown was actually the best thing for my nature. At this point, I know who I wanted to be for my astrological work, and I knew the environments and the right sort of way to use my energy on a daily basis from human design. But it wasn't until 4 years ago when I discovered the gene keys that I stumbled on an even deeper revelation. Nothing in life is fixed or fated. All of these archetypes and ideal conditions, they're not meant to like put us into a box, but they're simply potentials to contemplate based on a vibrational level that we're operating at. And the gene keys gave me and gives a lot of people sort of a roadmap for what happens at different frequency levels. So this is really cool because all of a sudden these readings, which are very kind of two-dimensional, telling you this is who you are, this is what you do, this is where your energy works, now took on a multi-dimensional feel because you add frequency into the mix and you see that everything's a potential, nothing's fated, there's no bad accidents, you're not going to be a victim of your chart essentially. So I began coaching with these systems. I took many attempts at trying to unite them, but unfortunately earlier on I failed with that. So I had to use them sort of separately in readings to give different perspectives to people. And I saw other people doing this as well, using the gene keys, human design, and astrology. So I knew there was merit to it. I just happened to get really excited about it, passionate about it, and it was providing a lot of value for people because I could do a reading and I would look at the 3 different charts, and by the end of that, we have a pretty accurate placement for what's going on in a person's life and what they need to do. So it was very valuable to my clients. Despite the positive feedback and accuracy I was getting with the readings, I did have this nagging sensation that I could only reach a certain level of depth in these readings. And oftentimes people would say, oh, thank you, I've seen that in myself. Or even, and this I didn't like as much, but that reading sounds perfectly like the old version of me. So it was telling me that something about these systems wasn't actually like penetrating to the heart of a person's true essence and giving them breakthrough revelations. I knew these readings could be a lot more profound. And last year, I had an opportunistic meeting with a friend in Singapore, and this guy is definitely from the future because his level of innovation and the work he's doing is really awe-inspiring, and he's helped thousands of people through his work. And what he told me during this meeting really shocked me. He said, astrology, human design, and the gene keys, we're not using the right zodiac or configuration of planets in the sky. And on some level, I kind of knew this because astronomers and astrologers had long clashed because astrology does not reflect the planets and the stars as they appear in the sky. Human design and gene keys are based off of Western astrology, so they too carry some of these inaccurate placements. And there's a reason for this, but it's a little bit complicated, and it basically has to do with where the sun rises on the spring equinox and the way it migrates with the 26,000 year cycle that is what's called the wobble of the Earth, and this has been scientifically verified. But the point here is that we're talking about energy emitted from stars and planets affecting us. Surely they would influence us in the same manner as they appeared in the sky, right? If we try to offset the zodiac, it's not really an accurate representation of what's happening. So it turns out the Indian astrologers had known this for millennia. It's only been in the West that we've used this other offset. It's called the tropical zodiac. In the East, they use the sidereal zodiac, which is the stars as they appear in the sky. In India, they say astrology is based on the actual planets and stars in the sky, and they try to be accurate about that. And I know that still to this day, the Indian government uses astrologers to predict train delays in the train schedules. Would you believe that? So this is used as a pretty high level, and it's used by people who we'd otherwise assume, wanted nothing to do with esoteric science. But back to my story. My friend asked me why I thought this was that we were using this offset zodiac, and it didn't match the stars in the sky. I replied, well, it's the matrix, isn't it? And he nodded. Yes, the zodiac that our Western astrology, human design and gene keys is based off, does work, despite not reflecting the material truth of what we see in the sky. But it doesn't tell us the whole story. In fact, elites have long used astrology to maintain their control. The courts of medieval kings and ancient kings in the Roman and Greek era, they would have court astrologers that would be whispering in the ears of kings, finding the fate and fortune of what their future would look like. And more recently, the oligarch J.P. Morgan famously said, millionaires do not use astrology, but billionaires do. And he was known to have a very skilled astrologer to help him make a lot of financial decisions. And he was, one of the richest men in the world over 100 years ago. So astrology was the little secret of the elite that allowed the power brokers to stay in control. So astrology, human design, and gene keys, they're not wrong, but we have to understand what they are describing. They are describing the nature of our conditioning, the inner workings of the Maya itself. So when we use these systems, we move through the layers of our conditioning as we slowly remove the matrix from us. They leave us with a cleaner version of ourselves, but it still doesn't track the core of who we really are. To know this, we must go straight to the source. You see, there are two paths to healing, self-discovery, deconditioning, and returning to our true essence. The first is like unraveling layers of an onion, and this is the path that a lot of people take. We start with the current life condition we find ourselves in, and we progressively work back from there. And we're often met with conflicting revelations, as one layer of the onion can be 180 degrees different from the next layer of the onion. So each layer contains sort of a complex labyrinth of different buried traumas that surface that might be diametrically opposed to the last layer that we're working through. That's why astrology, human design, and gene keys are meant to be used over time. The founder of human design, Ra Uru, said it takes at least 7 years to work with this system to fully decondition ourselves. And in 2024, who has 7 years to do anything? We don't know when things are massively going to shift out there. So 7 years is a long time to get started on a path. So now for the second path to healing. And this path I find much more interesting, fast, and effective. Now, my mentor once said that the kingdom of heaven is a mere hair's breadth away. What he meant by this is that our ideal life exists as a frequency, and the life that we're currently living with all of its conditioning and problems is also a frequency. But these two frequencies are out of sync with each other based on the level of reality that we're living in. And if you have frequencies that are even slightly out of sync, I think musically, it's not very pleasant. It's like listening to a piano that's out of tune. Nothing played on that piano could possibly sound good. So it's kind of like us. If we are out of tune from our ideal reality, no matter how hard we try, it's not going to sound good. The frequencies we put out in the world are not going to be the ones that bring us what we want and what we need. If we found the sound or the signal of our ideal reality and we hit that note, it begins to tune us, much like a tuning fork is used to bring an out-of-tune piano back into perfect resonance. So when your personal ideal reality is revealed, it begins to recalibrate you from the inside out. Often this happens automatically, and I was quite shocked when I realized that, wow, just reading this, it's like reading like perfectly curated wisdom that you left for yourself. It's like you left breadcrumbs in the cosmos. Your higher self put them there so you would find them later. So I believe that basically one of these paths is, a meandering path that takes a long time, and the other path is you go directly to source and work back from there. I believe that at this time in history, we can actually handle the direct path. For a long time, we had to take the meandering path because the collective understanding and the collective conditioning, it needed to be adjusted slowly and gradationally over time. Too fast and something could break. So we've come a long way as a collective. And we're also at a time in history where we can handle the direct path. But we don't really have much time left. And I think a lot of people feel that with everything going on out there, we can feel that a big change is about to come. And we need to be ready for that shift if we're going to make it, both individually and collectively. And I really don't want to see all of this end in sort of self-destruction. I want to see us actually step in to that higher octave of living collectively and individually from a place of sovereignty, joy, and freedom. Therefore, anything that can help us do that, anything that can help us get back there is going to be very, very beneficial. So I believe Trifecta is the vehicle that can allow this to happen because it reveals the fundamental blueprint of your ideal reality so you can just tune back to it. It blends parts of astrology, human design, and the gene keys using the true sidereal zodiac. And this is the scientific basis for the planets and stars as they actually appear in the sky. And like I said, this information has only been available based on very recent computer and high-powered telescopic imaging. So Trifecta, using this, allows you to follow a specific path of healing your core wound first, so that it removes the wreckage and the distractions and the resistance, so you can clearly see and tap back into your ideal reality. But that's not enough. We need to actually make that real and materialize it. We're here to master the physical plane. And therefore, the third step is naturally attracting prosperity, the resources and relationships you need to thrive in a way that works for you. So not grinding and hustling away at something that brings you, very lackluster results. So I learned this all firsthand when my friend pulled up my astrology chart during this meeting and he showed me the true sidereal zodiac. It looked very strange from what I was used to. I could see the planets and the stars actually as they were in the sky. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. This agrees with astronomy now. It was so weird to see this chart though, because there's 13 signs instead of 12. And I immediately, because I was in a sort of a difficult place, I was obviously looking for some revelation about why this might be happening. So I looked to my Chiron, or the collective core wound placement. And it was in the sign of Taurus, not in Gemini. But this kind of struck a chord, and it actually made a lot of sense all of a sudden. So my friend said to me, do you want to understand what this means at a deeper level? Because, astrology is pretty good, but it's kind of like you're in one of 12 categories. So sometimes you need other supplementary information to drill deeper. And I nodded, and I was very, very curious, because all of a sudden this general or high level interpretation made a lot more sense. And so he basically took my Chiron from the astrology chart and he did a cool thing and put it in my human design, and then told me to look at it in the gene keys. And as I read the description from the gene keys, I was confronted with raw truth. When I experience chaos in my business and long-term relationships, I forgot who I am, or I forget who I am. This sent shivers down my spine, because this was the exact theme that was giving me so much pain and suffering during this dark night of the soul. And the beautiful part about the gene keys is it doesn't condemn you to your placements. Instead, it shows you where they are out of balance and when they could be balanced, how they would manifest in your life. So the solution was right there in front of me. When I innovate in business and relationships, I create magic and live in a state of mindfulness, in a state of flow. And I've also felt that as well. I'm like, oh, so that's the antidote. Now, these might seem like simple terms, but it started to recalibrate something on a deep level. I felt very calm, very relaxed, and I immediately knew it was time to switch directions, the direction I was heading, and to start innovating. This was how I was able to turn everything around so fast in my own life. So I've really kind of like thrown a lot of terms and different systems out there. So I also want to give you the opportunity to find your own Chiron or collective wound placement, and also its healed expression for free. I want you to experience the massive benefits and shifts that I did. I'll share that with you in a bit so you can get started on an incredible journey of self-discovery using Trifecta, just like I did. But first, I want you to understand how Trifecta works. And to start, I'd like to go through each of the systems that it is built upon. So astrology was my first love when it came to self-discovery. For 20 years, I came to understand so much about myself through this lens. It's a great system for understanding the archetypes of our relationship with others, our mission, and the ways in which we handle resources and grow in our lives. But it has two major drawbacks. One is that the resolution of information is low because you basically have a planet in one of 12 signs. The planet is like a theme. The sign is sort of like the energy of that theme, or the backdrop, you could say. So there's basically 30 degrees of sky space dedicated to each constellation. So this actually makes the interpretations quite general, because whatever your interpretation is, it's going to fall into the same category as 1/12 of humanity. Oh, my sun is in Capricorn. That means I'm able to climb the corporate ladder, plan ahead, and be good with money. That's too vague for me. I want something that's like much more specific. As a result, you have to really learn the finer mathematics of your chart and the relationship between planets to start finding out this finer grained detail. This requires quite a bit of study or working with a skilled astrologer for a longer period of time. The second issue that I have, that I just discovered on this day with my friend, is that it uses the tropical zodiac, or the one that I talked about earlier that's roughly 21 degrees out from what we see in the sky. This means that the information it is telling you is skewed from the actual placements of stars and planets. Again, it speaks to your life in the matrix that is trying to break free. And when I came across human design, I thought I was looking into the schematics of a rocket engine. It was foreign, complicated, and angular. It was just bizarre. However, I was fortunate enough to have somebody offer me a reading. And when I worked with a skilled reader, he told me information that was much more specific and useful, especially for my situation. So you see, in astrology, like I said, there's 12 different placements to describe the themes of your life. Human design uses 64. So that's more than 5 times more accurate right there. And not only that, it calls them gates. And so each gate takes up 5.6 degrees of sky space, kind of like a constellation is a sign, which is 30 degrees. In human design, you have a gate, which is smaller, more specific, that takes up 5.6 degrees of sky space. So the information is more precise. Now, these 64 placements called gates are actually correlated with the 64 codons of DNA that were mapped out in the ancient times through the Taoist I Ching. So there is a science to it, a direct correlation between the stars, planets, and the fundamental blueprint of who we are, our DNA. This I found fascinating because I actually don't have a woo-woo mind. I have a science mind. So I do have a little bit of a woo-woo. I'm very open-minded to things. And the backstory of human design really it's a trip. So there's a Canadian man named Ra Uruhu living in Ibiza. He had been very successful in running like a marketing agency or an ads agency. And he had given it all up, been living in Ibiza for years, sleeping in the wilderness, staying in these like ruinas, which are like ruined buildings almost. And he was instructed one day by a mysterious voice to write 400 pages of complicated channel text. This lasted 8 days. He did not sleep, eat, or drink during this time. And his dog just lay there with him. During this time, this 8-day intense transmission, and he didn't say it was a pleasant experience, by the way. He wasn't all romantic about this. The voice gave him all the keys to what keeps humans playing small, being victims of their own conditioning. He later said that this voice was likely the voice of the bundle of design crystals that lie at the center of the earth. This is human design jargon, but what he's trying to say, it's like the voice of the earth itself communicating to him in a way that his mind could perceive. So he was getting sort of a direct transmission from the center of the earth about how humans were kept in their conditioning. And it was probably coming at a time where the earth was getting ready to shift. And so it needed humans to kind of follow suit. So one thing that strikes me about this rapturous episode is that the earth isn't actually perfect. It isn't like, the perfect, unblemished, unconditioned God being. It is divinity, and it is a vastly greater and incomprehensible intelligence compared to us, but it's a victim of a matrix too. The 26,000-year wobble of the earth is the mechanism that keeps the earth locked into Maya. I once did a video on this, and I talked about the precession of the equinox over the 26,000 years and how each 2,500-year period, there's a different control mechanism on place on planet Earth. It's a great video. It's on my other channel, The Blade and Chalice. I'll revisit the subject again later in more detail on this channel as well, so please do stay tuned for that. But the important part here is that the voice could only pass on knowledge that it was aware of. It was subjected to this 21-degree skew of sky space, of Maya, that would seed the transmission to this fellow Ra Uru, who came up with human design. So is it helpful? Yes. Is it true and perfect and objective? No, because it came from a source that still had its own conditioning, just on a level that's much more free of conditioning than human conditioning. So human design grew massively in popularity since Ra received the channel information from the voice in 1987. In 2003, Richard Rudd, who is a student of Ra and a student of human design, went rogue. He created his own system called the Gene Keys. And the Gene Keys was a simplified method of human design that introduced an incredible new concept. The placement of a planet in a gate, which is 5.6 degrees of sky space, linked to a codon of our DNA, was not fixed in its expression. In fact, the entire range of expressions possible depended on the frequency at which the DNA was operating. Now, if you've studied DNA elsewhere, you know that we have the power through our intention and our attitude to actually shift ancestral patterning, ancestral trauma. So this has been proven, at least empirically true, through millions of people that have used therapies that allowed them to basically shift things within themselves. I used to do a lot of work around this with myself and clients. So I have a personal firsthand experience of what this is. So when I came across it, I'm like, this is a no-brainer. I've just never seen a system that doesn't pigeonhole you. Instead, it gives you sort of that wider breadth. It creates this, going from a two-dimensional chart into this multi-dimensional lived experience. So when we operate out of our shadow frequency, external forces cause us to brace against, or alternatively react to life. We're essentially controlled by our conditioning, and as a result experience very different and nuanced forms of suffering. When we individuate ourselves and we live from our heart, we step into something called the gift frequency. And the gift frequency is really where life starts to flow. We're in communion with the world happening around us. And this is really like the frequency of success in life. But it goes even higher than that. There's an enlightened state that he calls the Siddhic quality, which comes from Sanskrit. And this state of transcendence was basically where, once again, the experience of your DNA, it kind of like merges back into unity. And so you become this exalted expression of your own innate divinity. So mid-frequency with the Gene Keys was the missing piece to the puzzle. What once seemed fated in astrology and human design was now a living, vibrant potential that exists on an unbroken spectrum for which our attitude controls. I like this. It's a very empowering stance. So we are in control of our destiny, and it will take a certain course depending on how we live our lives. We have the power to epigenetically rewrite our DNA. However empowering this information was, it was still based on a system rooted in Maya. Like I said earlier, there is still tremendous value in working with systems based on the tropical or Western zodiac, but the path meanders more. It takes longer and it goes through layers upon layers of deconditioning. What Trifecta does is use some of the powerful information in astrology related to the planets. It's like a larger encyclopedia of planets, houses, signs, complicated stuff, but it's not typically used in human design in the gene keys. But it's been used for millennia. It's been empirically tested. And basically, when we incorporate the human design, we can then work with this wider repertoire of information in very kind of specific, precise placements. So astrology doesn't really give us precise placements. Human design does. It also gives us very precise ways that shows up in our biology and our energy. So I love that razor sharp precision of the gates and even the smaller intervals beyond gates, known as lines, colors, tones, and bases. It goes really, really like microscopic basically on your chart, which is super cool. But the gene keys then are used to depict the different frequency levels that a placement operates at, so that we can see where the shadow aspects lie in our own experience of life and how they long to be expressed harmoniously as a gift frequency. So in essence, it takes the diversity of celestial bodies from astrology, the diversity of interpretations from human design, diversity of interpretation from all the different planets and houses, and then it filters that through the precision of human design and empowers it into a multidimensional personal experience through the gene keys. But the most important part isn't all those. The most important part is that the entire system is based on the true sidereal zodiac, the stars precisely as they are mapped in the sky. When all of these come together now, you get a clear and simple picture of your true blueprint, the nature and longing of the life that exists as a frequency in your ideal reality. You could meditate for years to clear away the conditioning to find it, or you could simply reveal in a matter of minutes what your higher self encoded for you at your time of birth. Then all you need to do is decode that and live according to that, and you basically take that direct path that I was referring to earlier. So humans all around the world knew that our origins and highest destiny was imprinted on the cosmos at the time of birth. However, the accuracy in pinpointing this has increased as we have refined our models. And it's only been in the last 30 years that we have accurate models of the stars and planets, specifically the constellation boundaries, to refine this even further. I suppose human design is less than 40 years old as well, and it was a huge development in the self-development world. There's some pretty complex mechanics to how I created Trifecta that I don't think are appropriate for an intro video. I haven't built any fancy software yet, so it's not like you go to astro.com or Genetic Matrix, plug in your birth information and it pops out. I've got to do this through a number of Excel sheets that I've created and that I've done some coding on with my basic level of coding. Fortunately, I know a couple of developers that can help me to build software with this, which is going to be really exciting. So what I do now is I actually create charts for people by hand that are very simple to read, understand, and help you shift. But like I said earlier, many people just read their Trifecta report and things start shifting for them. The language that encodes these charts activates alignment on a subconscious level. It's like a Porsche. It's elegant and easy to drive. You just want to drive it. And you don't really need to know what's under the hood to take it for a spin. Now, some people want to become auto mechanics. They want to learn how systems work. I can help them with that. But for the most part, we want to fix the immediate situation that we're in. So just using the system to start with is really what I'm trying to communicate with this video. So the development of this system followed my own redemption from the dark night of the soul into a much more relaxed life filled with revelation and a much more flowing evolution, harmony, and prosperity in life. So life basically turned around for me. I've laid the journey of Trifecta out basically across 9 different themes. So when you work with Trifecta, there is a process to it that is important. So you start by shifting your collective wounds, so the imprint of being born and having the world imprint upon you. That's the one we start with first, because we need to actually see who we are in relationship to the world. Then you balance your deep-seated emotional state. So these are the difficult emotions that you don't normally have access to because they're subconscious, and they kind of take control of you. So we want to bring ourselves into a emotional state that serves us essentially. This in turn changes based on our emotional state. It changes where we unconsciously place energy. So we go from wasting it away on fruitless endeavors and lower emotions to directing it towards a higher calling. Now at this point, we are primed to reveal our life path, the road you're meant to walk in this life that will feel the most fulfilling for you, because this is like your nature. After that, we zoom out and we look at your deeper soul mission. So this is like where you want to go on a bigger picture than just this human incarnation. From there, we take the actual path you're going to walk, and that's what I call your purpose. So life path, soul mission, and purpose are the next three. The final three are really where things get fun. This is about how you naturally attract prosperity so that you can feel good about attracting the resources you need to build your dreams without getting bent out of shape hustling for money or living in constant scarcity. A lot of the time, especially spiritual people, they'll get their alignment right, but they won't ever be able to materialize what they need because of their patterns around wealth, abundance, prosperity, resources, relationships. So after you dial in how you naturally create prosperity, then we look at your attraction mechanism. What are you attracting and bringing and drawing towards you in the world? And then finally, the last one is revealing the hidden gifts that your ancestors have bestowed you with, or past lives, if you believe in that. So these are the mighty talents that are lying basically dormant within your genetic code. These are gifts that are already there for you to claim. Sounds like a lot. Well, it is, because a big transformation is more than a single step. But even that first step of identifying your collective wound is enough to facilitate a big shift. It did for me. When I revealed my collective wound, my relationship went from near breakup to harmonious, my health improved as my stress levels dissolved, and my business went from bleeding out cash every month to tripling my income in 3 weeks, that's like a quantum effort. That's the power of being in alignment. You create quantum efforts because you are working in communion with the greater forces of life. So quantum effort is you put in this much energy and you get this much result out. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. So if you're curious, I invite you to start by getting your collective wound reading by clicking the link in the description below. I have a free app to use Trifecta that my developer friend coded for me. Just click the link below, try it out for yourself. I highly encourage you to put in your real email because you're going to get a free 3-day plan to go with that. Also, please don't put in fake emails. Sometimes people do that just because they want the reading, but it messes with my email service provider. So I'm giving a gift to you. Just please, put in a real email. Even if you don't want the emails, just put in the same email twice. You won't get a duplicate, or put in an email you don't read or something if you don't want the reports. But I highly recommend the 3-day journey because it gives you the exact tools to work with your collective wound. So this video that I'm creating here is just the start of an exciting new collection of videos I'll be creating on the subject of Trifecta. I have a real calling now, after all the deep research and work and testing that I've done, to share this with the world on a larger stage. This is a living development, by the way. In fact, just a week ago, I made a huge breakthrough discovery with the system that it changed everything. And again, my readings went to the next level. So if you check out my future videos, you'll likely see greater and greater refinements and developments within the system. And you'll be able to see it grow as I grow with it. So if you're watching this, 6 months down the road, realize that this is the first video of me kind of coming forth in the series, and that future videos will have future developments. Because after all, the antidote to my collective wound is innovation, and innovation never stops moving. So thank you for watching. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to get your free collective wound reading by clicking the link below. Thank you.